Hello, cinephiles, and welcome to Silver Screen Sips, a podcast where three idiots talk about movies. And today we are going to begin the Lord of the Rings franchise, starting with The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, with our very special guest, Mr. Tom Vaughan. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, glad you could be here.
I was going to say a very good choice for movie.
Are you a fan?
I have mixed feelings about it, but I have feelings about it.
It's got feelings. That's what's important.
Okay, that's important. Yeah. There's just a reminder that there are spoilers ahead for movies and TV shows that you may not have seen yet. So just know you've been warned. I won't give that usual spiel about how this movie's been out for however long because it is The Hobbit, and
not that many people have seen it.
Yes,
or read it.
Yeah, or read it.
Or read it. How many who has read it here?
I have not, but it's on my list.
I have not. It is not on my list. My little 10-year-old listens to the Audible of it, so I hear it all the time.
Oh, okay. That kind of counts then.
Yeah.
I know Isaiah hasn't. He's also just never seen The Lord of the Rings in general. So we've been waiting for this. Yeah.
Yeah, even if you don't love the movies, I mean, the experience of all 6 films is worthwhile.
Yes, all 14 hours of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and it eats out an entire day. I guess I'm the only one that's read the book then.
Yeah, I have big questions about the third act.
Sorry, I just faintly heard Lewis go, "Wait, you actually read it?
You can read it?"
Yes, I did. Yeah, it's like one of the few books I've read in my life. So
how long ago?
Oh, good question. Probably, I think it was actually right before the movie came out. So I was probably like 11 or 12.
So 2011, 2012?
Yeah, it was before the Hobbit movie came out. I know that. And I know that came out in 2012.
Okay.
So I was young. So I remember majority of it, but there's a lot that I'm probably forgetting. But I can tell you what's definitely not in the book, and that's in the second movie. But that's for another conversation.
Because there's no women in the book.
Mm-hmm.
There's no women in the book?
Apparently not. Like all the female characters.
So that whole romance is just fabricated out of nothing?
She does not exist in the second. Neither is Legolas is not there either. Just saying.
It felt out of place.
Yes. Okay, well then this will be interesting for sure. Now, I guess we'll start off like we always do with our recap in Hollywood. Now, we've been a little MIA, so we might be a little behind on some of the news headlines. But Lewis, why don't you introduce us to our first segment?
All right. Well, since we always love to start with the best segment on this podcast, it's This Week in Hollywood.
Ooh.
Isaiah is going to be giving us a quick rundown of the 2023 Oscars to start our first headline.
Yes, so the 2023 Oscars have come and gone. I kind of forgot they were happening. Kind of sucks given that, my tradition was to watch them every year.
I know, I'm very surprised.
But the 2022 Oscars, we're a bit late to announce the answers, but we still
2023.
Have... 2023? What year did I say?
You said 2022.
Now, for Best Picture, Everything Everywhere All at Once won with no surprises. It is now the most nominated and award-winning movie of all time. It has possible. Jamie Lee Curtis won for her first ever Academy Award in a supporting role. Keith Kwan won Best Supporting Actor for Everything Everywhere. Brendan Fraser won for Best Actor in a Leading Role in The Whale. Lastly, Michelle Yeoh, the GOAT, won the Best Actress in a Lead Role. You can find all the other winners and awards simply by searching the 2023 Oscars. It is on their website, and Google has this nice little category to explain everything to you. But if you haven't seen Everything Everywhere, go watch it. Damn good movie.
It's on my list. I'm going to watch it.
You have not seen it yet, Beth.
I have not. I just watched. My goal this year is to watch all the 2023 Oscars.
Should have seen it the first or second weekend. There's so much hype behind it now. There's so much.
Definitely. I also wanted to add the whole Jamie Lee Curtis winning her first ever Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
Good for her. It's about damn time. She's been acting for how many years now? 60? years, maybe.
It's up there.
It's up there. It's above 50. I know that.
Maybe he started in 75, so probably 45, 48 years.
Maybe not over 50 then. Either way, she's been in a lot.
Yeah. A lot of feel-good stories with the Oscars this year.
The same with Michelle Yeoh. This was her first win too, and she's been acting forever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't this also Ke Kwan's
yeah, I was
first
just
Oscar?
about to say that. And he's been acting for forever as well.
Yeah, since he was a child in Indiana Jones. It's crazy.
Or the Goonies.
Or the Goonies. That too.
Yeah. Anyways, on to the next one. We'll keep talking about the Oscars.
This is one of our more somber headlines for the week. We did lose a beloved actor and voice actor and video game character this past week in Mr. Lance Reddick. Mr. Reddick was known for his work on a variety of great TV shows, including The Wire. His voice was lended to an excellent character in the Horizon video game franchise, as well as the Destiny franchise, and he unfortunately passed away, supposedly of natural causes, at the age of 60. He was loved by many, will be missed by many, and may you rest in peace, Lance Reddick.
Now, let's, I guess, bring things back up.
Yes,
Guillermo del Toro. Yeah. Guillermo del Toro, my favorite, is currently working on his next big film, Frankenstein, which is going to be a live-action film for Netflix. Now, the director has his eyes set on Oscar Isaac, amazing, Andrew Garfield, also amazing, and Mia Goth, who I don't know if I've seen any of her work, but...
Oh, she's so good.
He has his eyes set on them to star in this film, and he's been pondering the idea since as early as 2008. However, not much information has been released at this time, so we will update you once we receive the release dates, the official casting, and even trailers and stuff, let you know. But I mean, anything by Guillermo del Toro, I'm usually all for, so.
She's game.
Oh yeah.
Now, speaking of directors, director Zack Snyder has revealed that he is working on a role-playing adaptation of his upcoming Netflix film, Rebel Moon.
Adaptation.
Adaption.
Do that. You've done that so much.
Data.
Yeah.
Apples, oranges, whatever. Snyder teased an interview by saying this RPG that we're doing is just so immersive, so intense, and so huge. The Rebel Moon film is set to arrive on Netflix this December, but is unknown when the RPG will be released. All we know is the RPG will help fans immerse themselves further into the Rebel Moon universe, which it's first off Netflix, so could be a miss. We all know how Netflix is.
But it's Zack Snyder.
It's Zack Snyder, which I kind of have a love-hate relationship, so it could be a miss.
Yeah,
as well.
feel the same.
But it's also an RPG. Like, that's a huge task, doing an RPG, especially one that's, as he said, going to be huge. Like, you really got to do it right.
I say it's so hard to anticipate an audience for that.
Yeah. Especially something for a movie that hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, like you're really anticipating demand for a movie that hasn't come out yet. Like that's tough. That's bold.
That's a lot of
Zack Snyder.
Snyder.
Yeah.
To add here, since he does say so immersive, so intense, and so huge, it gives me the idea that he's trying to create something like an MMORPG as large
That's what
as
I'm thinking.
as large as the Old Republic or even World of
Skyrim.
Warcraft. I mean, Skyrim's more of it is a large RPG, but that would be a good example as well. But I was thinking more like, is he going for that multiplayer version? Like where you can, like World of Warcraft and the Old Republic?
Yeah.
But were any of those were any of those started from scratch? They're all based off previous franchises, right? Like there's already demand for Skyrim. There's already demand for World of Warcraft.
Skyrim was the 5th installment in the Elder Scrolls series, which I think was originally a set of books. But
I mean, is Rebel Moon based off anything? Like, is it from a book?
I don't think so.
I'm literally looking it up right now.
I mean, they tried that with the zombie film he did with Netflix, and then they tried to do the Safecracker movie along with it, which seemed strange.
They were trying to build a army. It's weird to say army franchise because it's the Army of Thieves, Army of the Dead,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Zack Snyder fan.
I'm sorry. I have to read what I just read right here. So everybody, Rebel Moon is inspired by the works of Akira Kurosawa and Star Wars.
Yeah.
Okay, so
The film also began development as a Star Wars film that Snyder had pitched to Lucasfilm in the time period between the conclusion of the prequel trilogy in 2005 and the sale of Lucasfilm to the Walt Disney Company in 2012.
That's fascinating.
yeah, I mean, if it's anything like Star Wars, then
I don't think it's gonna be anything like Star Wars.
His pitch is that it's a mature version of the Star Wars universe,
so if Disney never took over, is what you're saying.
essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, Disney. When am I gonna get my zombie virus stormtrooper movie? Huh?
Dude, don't get me excited, okay? That would be sick. All right, let's move on. So, another director. We're on a director roll here. Quentin Tarantino. His final film is reportedly ready to begin production. The movie is titled The Movie Critic and reportedly will have a female lead at the center of the story. Now, as far as the story goes, it's been kept well under wraps for the most part. However, we do know that the story supposedly is being set in the late 1970s. The director is hoping to start production this fall, so we might see something maybe in 2024, 2025. We'll see, which is just crazy to say. I just said 2025, like it's next. That's, whoa.
In a week.
Yikes. Yeah.
That will be Jamie Lee Curtis's 50-year mark. Also, I believe Quentin said that this is his last film.
His last film.
Yeah.
I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, no, he'll be like 3 years into retirement and be like itching and be like, I gotta make another one.
He's gonna pull a John Williams. He's gonna be like, this is my last
Composition.
movie I'm composing, and then be like, you know what?
I can do another
I'm
one.
back.
Yeah. The Return.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you know what? They offered me a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Get another one in there.
And then you got to
Yeah.
make another one after that because 11's a weird number.
It is. Has to
So
be
you'd
even.
have to make 12.
But then
Right.
you'd want to go to 13, but then you'd have to go to 14 to not leave it on again. So
But you're that close to 15, you might as well make it 15.
Make it nice and even.
Yeah.
there you go.
That it is such a hard thing to give up. It's like you get so addicted.
Music? Or
Just
composing?
making movies.
Yeah.
You get so addicted to it, particularly Tarantino. Of like, he's so important. He's the center of this universe that he's created, and is he? I find it hard to believe that he's going to be able to let that go. Like it's.
Did he say why?
Yes.
It's his age?
He believes that most great directors started making worse films as they got older, and he wants to protect his library, the films that he's made, which I think sounds good when you say it, but when you go 5 years without making a movie, I think you're itching at it. And there's plenty of good examples of people who continue on making good films. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, some people do not get better. Billy Wilder's one of my favorites, and certainly his last few films were not up to his standards. But Spielberg's still making great movies. Scorsese's still making great movies. They may not be the best movies they've ever made, but if you're a film director and then suddenly you decide, I'm not going to be a film director anymore, I think that's a much tougher. It sounds exciting to say, and then you build it up, but then it's not like it's an athlete where you physically can't compete anymore and you have to retire, and then you've got to find some meaning to your life outside of that. So I mean, who knows? I don't know I don't know the guy, so it could very well be true, but I find it shocking.
Oh no, I agree. He'll change his mind. Louis, why don't you give us our last headline?
Well, this is a mixed feelings headline.
Yeah.
Sam Neill, the actor best known for his lead role in the Jurassic Park franchise, was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma back in 2022. The beloved actor revealed that he's been receiving treatment for stage 3 blood cancer and is currently in remission. He underwent chemotherapy. He initially underwent chemotherapy with a drug that apparently was having issues really attacking the cancer and I guess preventing the progression of his symptoms. So he was able to start on a different drug and actually progress to now be cancer-free.
Yay.
The actor has reported that he will be staying on this new monthly chemotherapy drug for the rest of his life.
Oh,
That's gonna suck, but at least he's, better than having it, I guess.
He's going to be around to have it suck.
Yeah.
And from what I understand of, I did actually work in a radiation oncology and meet a few chemotherapy doctors. Monthly chemotherapy is a much more manageable thing than having to do it more frequently than that.
On a later note, can we talk about the legend that is Sam Neill of him responding with, "I'm not afraid to die, but it would greatly annoy me"?
Yes. When I read that in an article, I was like, oh, Sammy boy.
That was the first bit of Hollywood news I had not heard already. So thank you for that.
Oh, good. Yay. All right. Well, that concludes This Week in Hollywood. So you can find all of our sources cited on our Discord channel. Now, Tom.
Yes.
If you don't mind, we have a couple questions we'd like to ask you, just so our viewers can get to know who you are, what you do, and I guess I'll start first.
All right.
You've done a lot of work as writer, writing and producing films, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, as a writer, what would you say is the biggest hurdle that you tend to face when you are starting a new story?
A new story. Mm-hmm. After a while, it tends to be structure. Early on, before I really understood structure so much, I could breeze through it, and I didn't know that was a big hurdle. And then it was the scene work. Like how do I create great scenes? How do I create great sequences? And now, as I've been around a little longer, I know the biggest part of a script, as far as moving forward into the business, is going to be the great scenes and the great sequences. But I also know, given time, I can figure those out. I can make a scene fun. Depending on what the genre is, if it's horror or comedy, I know I can do that. So really, the biggest hurdle is early on is just making those big decisions of, oh, here's a random idea. Here's a thought I have. Here's some situation that I have. How do I start to formulate that into a story? Like, what are those initial questions of what is the dramatic question? What is the actual story? Making those big decisions. Because once you make those really big decisions of, what story am I telling here? What dramatic question am I going to structure the story around? Once you make those big decisions, all the little ones tend to get easier and easier and easier.
I think I would have to agree with, the structure being a part of it. I had to, I've taken screenwriting classes, and I've had a fair share of short screenplays that I've written just because, creativity hits kind of a thing. And mm-hmm. You get that burst of like, oh, I have the perfect scene played out in my head, and then you put it out on paper, and then you're like, okay, but now what do I do? I got this one part taken care of, but now I have to fix or figure out the rest of the entire story.
Oh, so this is a narrative. I need a narrative.
Yeah.
And what is your focus? Do you focus on writing, or do you focus on directing? Or I know you work on sets.
Yes. So I work at a production and studio here in Tampa in Florida, mm-hmm. but I mainly am the photographer, and I also do editing.
Okay.
So I'm more of the digital side of things than the writing. I've loved writing, and I've always loved writing, but that's more of like a free time thing for me.
Mm-hmm. And if you could pick and choose what you wanted to do within the system, what would it be?
Ooh, I actually really enjoy photography, but I guess that doesn't really count for film. So I would probably say, maybe screenwriting, or like, I feel like I sound cliche if I said directing, but directing is definitely up there.
Yeah, I don't think that's cliche. I mean, I think that's it's natural. That tends to be the primary decision maker. Few people would be like, "What do you want to do?" Well, I don't want to make decisions. That's for sure. I don't.
That's one decision I have made is I don't want to make decisions.
So but you also will find your niche later on. I mean, I know I was always surprised by TV writers who don't want to be showrunners. Like that would always shock me.
Mm-hmm.
And to a person, it was always, I wanted to at first, and then I realized it wasn't my thing.
Yeah. I'm one of those people that I like doing kind of anything as long as it's film related. I'm pretty happy with whatever. You can stick me on Crafty if you really want to. I'll be fine if I'm on set. Like
I want a sandwich. Come get your sandwich.
Yeah. Or like if you make me sound, I'll do kind of. I know a little bit about a lot of it. That's what I always say when it comes to like, oh, what do you do in film? It's like, well, I kind of do a little bit of everything, just because that's how I am personally. If I do one thing for too long, I get kind of bored.
Right. Yeah, I can see that because a lot of on-set stuff is a lot of the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
Like that. Like there's the more creative ones. The DP, the director, the gaffer, like the people that are making that's a new problem every day.
Yeah.
Like that would be it tends to be a lot more interesting.
For sure. And I do enjoy gaffing as well. I've done my fair share of gaffing on sets, and that's not bad either.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be one of the more fun ones.
Oh yeah, that crew's always fun. I've never met a single like a gripper, gaffer, electrician that's not just like chill as fuck.
So, for the uneducated, what is a gaffer?
Yeah, so Lewis, I don't know if you know this, but Lewis is not in the film industry at all.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he just likes watching movies, but he kind of brings that outside person, middle, like a average person opinion to things.
Every man.
Thank you. That's the term,
if you will.
Mm-hmm. And he also brings the mixology aspect of our podcast.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, to answer your question, the gaffer is the head electrician for all the lights and electrical equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good to know.
So he's kind of like the boss man of the people who do like the lighting and stuff.
Works very, very tight with the DP.
Yeah. So he'll go to the director of photography and be like, okay, what are you thinking for this shot? And DP will just be like, put a light there, and then he'll be like, okay. And then he'll go over to the electricians and be like, all right, he wants you to put a light there, put a light there.
And then once you put it up, I'll measure it and we'll see if he likes it. And then when he gets mad, we'll take it down.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. He's a good guy, good person to ask how long is it going to take?
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I believe Isaiah also has a question.
Yes, I do have a question. I noticed that you do a lot of writing and producing. So I was wondering, which one do you happen to like more? And of the one you liked more, or if you had to choose, which aspects make it more appealing?
Well, it is mostly writing. A lot of the producing is titles that I negotiated in my writing deal. So
nice.
They don't really like the Queen Mary's coming out, and I'm a producer on that, but I basically just get phone calls and updates. I don't get to do that much on it. I learned that lesson early on for films that when I would come on and rewrite, and I would push the film forward and get the film greenlit, but you would not always get writing credit for it. So your name wouldn't be on it. And so I got to the point early on that I had a little of enough clout in the TV movie world in the early 2000s that I could, as part of my quote, I'd get a producing credit. And then I managed to, when I went back into feature films, to get that attached to it as well. And then the producing I do on my own on the side is more development. So with any producing these days, a huge part of producing is the first phase of just getting the screenplay ready, of developing it, working with the writer, finding the idea that you like, that you want to work with. But then as soon as you get to that point, your real job there is to find a bigger producer that has more clout and more ability to get things done.
Interesting.
I don't know what made me think of this, but I had to ask. When we were talking about writing and stuff, I noticed with one of your films, Winchester, so you're credited for that, but there's also, I believe, 2 other writers that were also credited for that.
Yes.
So my question is, how do you go about co-writing stuff? Because I've done that in the past. I wrote a feature film with 2 other writers as well, and we butted heads a lot on what to include, what not to include, how the story should go. So how did you kind of go about that? Because your film actually got made, mine didn't. So, so I want to know where I went wrong.
Well, there's 2 different versions of that. There's one where the WGA decides the writing credit. And
now, do you want to explain that to Lewis?
Yes, the WGA is the Writers Guild of America. That's basically our union, our guild, and all the studios are signatories to the Writers Guild. And the Writers Guild has exclusive domain to decide writing credit.
Right.
They decide. They have a panel, different panels each time. And for something like Winchester, where I wrote the first draft, and my version was a very different version of the movie. It was much more of a horror film, much more of a what lately is kind of more identified with James Wan tone. And the Spearigs came on, and they came on as directors and said, we want to rewrite it. And so they went off and they rewrote the script all themselves. I was not happy with the final result with what they did. Yeah. But the Writers Guild then decides, okay, here's Tom Vaughan's draft, and they know it as writer A, writer B. Here's writer A's draft. Here's writer B's draft. And they have a formula of, okay, well, they're directors. So if they're directors, they have to have at least 50% of the overall content. And it's not just text, it's the feel and narrative and characters. And then they decide, okay, Tom Vaughan's the first writer, so he'll get credit. And then the Spearig brothers wrote more than 50%, so they'll get credit. And it's a very big deal because in your contract, there's huge bonuses available to you when you have shared or sole credit. So it is not a small thing of what the guild decides. Right. And then you do not get residuals from the movie until you have writer's credit as well. So, and then Queen Mary was another one where Gary Dauberman wrote the first draft. I came in and rewrote Gary. And then the director came on board and the director decided he wanted to do a rewrite. And so he did a rewrite. And now these poor guys on the WGA panel have to look at Gary's draft, my draft, and the other Gary's draft. And in that case, I'm the middle writer. And you're not particularly in a good position as the middle writer. The first writer is almost always guaranteed to get writer's credit because they initiated the whole thing. Right. And then the director, of course, the director just changes everything at their whim. It's really amazing to watch as far as like, well, they just changed it. Like no one asked them to change it. They just changed it. So I didn't care so much on the Queen Mary because I didn't have a writing bonus on that one. So like it didn't matter for me whether the residuals would be nice. Certainly, I ended up getting a story credit, and of course, I negotiated the producing credit as well along with my deal. So I'll be a producer and a story by credit on that. But to your question, as far as working with a partner, I really enjoy working with a partner. I've had a couple writing partners over the years, and for me, the big part of it is trust. Right. That's huge. I do think someone needs to have the lead. Like there needs to be somebody who is like 51% of the say. Yep. To kind of push things forward. And then what I've done is, we split scenes. One person writes a scene, another person writes a scene, and then we just flip. And then we just I will rewrite her scene while she rewrites mine. And then we just keep rewriting each other until we're both happy with what we have. And then when there is big disagreements, Stephanie, my friend Stephanie, who I wrote a couple of scripts with, Stephanie Ansel, she had a device that she used, which was all right, if you disagree, how much do you care? From 1 to 9, how much do you care?
I love that system.
Well, I guess I need to take notes on that for my next time. Now, Lewis, you also have a question, correct?
Yes, I do have one final question for Tom. So, if I understand correctly, you were not only the writer but the director for, or well, you get the credit at least for Playing House in 2011.
Yes.
Right. So, I guess my question was, what was it like for you, at least, now being in that director role, and as compared to your other roles as getting that writing and producing credit on other films or other shows that you may have worked on?
Well, yeah, it was definitely a mixed experience. Like the experience of making the movie was wonderful, was really great. I will never ever have that kind of creative freedom again, because we made a really small movie. We had $130,000 budget, and I didn't have to answer to anybody. We just went and we made the movie, and it was a great group of people, a great crew. But in hindsight, looking back, it wasn't a great script, and I have no one to blame but myself. Christy and I wrote that script together.
Right.
We knew it was our worst script. The way it came about, it was such a weird experience of, there was a director here in Houston that had made a movie on the weekends. So he made this pretty good looking film, terrible script, really bad writing, but a good looking film. And so I said, why don't we take one of my scripts off the shelf, and you can make that movie, and we'll raise the money. We'll do it. You can make it on weekends, but it will at least be an upgrade in your movie and your script that you can shoot. And we were budgeting out at $35,000, $40,000, because he was going to shoot it on the weekends. And it was a shitty script of ours that was sitting on the shelf. It didn't sell. It shouldn't have sold. There was no reason for it to sell. And, we went ahead with that. And all of a sudden he started negotiating. He wanted more money. And I was like, I don't think you understand what the deal is. I'm giving you a script. I'm raising money for you to make this. But it's not a for-profit endeavor. This is not something, that we're going to negotiate these deals. So it ended up that it didn't work out with him, but I had already raised a certain amount of money, and we had the location, we had everything in place. And so I decided, well, here's my chance to direct something. So I'll do it. And I went in and I directed it. And my thought was, well, this will be my film school. I've been writing movies professionally for 15 years at that point. I've, watched other people make movies. I had been frustrated with a lot of the directors that I had worked with. So this was okay, let's go ahead and have some control, make this movie, see what we got. The problem is that I totally, at this point, the momentum was there to make the movie, and I had forgotten why we were making the movie to begin with. And I had forgotten that the reason why we were making this script is because it was the shittiest script that we wrote that I didn't mind giving away for free. And so, and then we go into production, and now I'm cutting because we've only, we raised a bunch more money. And so we totaled out about 130, which isn't a lot for the crew and the time. And so I'm trimming as much script as I can. And so we have fewer days to shoot, and I don't know any better. So I'm trimming pages, but I'm not trimming setups.
Ooh, right.
Because I haven't learned that yet. And so what I ended up doing is I cut the life out of a third tier script to begin with. And so there was no bounce, there was no life to the piece anymore. And so instead of being a kind of a Sundance character piece that turns into a psycho thriller, it ended up being just kind of like a Cinemax straight to video 1993 obsession film. There's just nothing special about it. There's nothing interesting about it. So the big lesson I learned out of that was always direct like there's not going to be a second time. Direct like there's not going to be don't choose a project. Don't go forward with something thinking, okay, this will be my film school. because you don't know when you'll get another chance to direct. And
Right.
if this isn't great, people think that's who you are. Oh, well, this is the kind of movies he makes. Do I want him to, do I want him to do this for this next film?
Absolutely. I like that you gave a lot more depth to your answer as far as, explaining your part and feeling like you cut the life out of the film. I was like, okay. I haven't seen the film as of yet. I did see the trailer on online, and I did read about it, and I was like, I wonder what it's like, making that jump, I guess is
behind the scenes.
I'm really happy with the camera work. I like the storytelling with the camera. I'm pretty pleased with, and definitely felt like when I was done of, okay, I can direct. Like this I can do. This is not beyond my skill set at all. And then of course you add in all the lessons you learn on top of that. It's
no, of course,
which are endless.
Yeah.
Now, Lewis.
Yes.
Do you have a drink for us today?
Because after being on set, you need a drink at the end of the day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, first I was going to say thank you to Tom for answering all our questions.
No, we don't think. No, I'm kidding.
Especially with such detail for some of them, or even the fact that he surprised me when he introduced a couple questions. No, he introduced a couple questions for you, Beth. So
no, you guys never asked me questions, so it was refreshing.
So for today's segment of Big Lou's Big Brews, we are going to the Difford's Guide for Discerning Drinkers.
Oh boy!
And today's drink its namesake is very relevant to the Hobbit trilogy.
Okay.
It is the Oakenshield cocktail.
Oh,
I like it.
Yes, I also think it's a very fitting mixture of ingredients for its namesake, Thorin Oakenshield. So, the Oakenshield cocktail is going to be a combination of blended Scotch whiskey, Cynar, or any other Carciofo Amaro. I'll get into what that is in just a moment.
I've got questions.
No, of course, I know. A Nocello walnut liqueur.
Okay.
Also, will be I'll be explaining each of these ingredients in just a moment. But
thank you.
And finally, this is the oddest one for me because I didn't know it was a thing. Saline solution.
Oh my God! In a drink?
Wait.
Right. That was my question too. I was like, hold on.
Saline, like the stuff they put in IVs, saline?
Yes, the 20 grams of sea salt to 80 grams of water saline, yes.
Okay.
4-to-1 saline.
All right.
Before I go through each of the ingredients, I'm also going to read the other parts here on the Difford's Guide. The review of the drink actually is a bittersweet,
little salty.
The bittersweet, herbal, and subtly nutty with delicate notes of smoky whiskey.
Okay.
A tasty late night sipper. Apparently, it was adapted from a recipe first made by Pip Hansen at the Marvel Bar at the Bachelor Farmer in Minneapolis, USA.
Pippin.
Okay, so the first ingredient we'll talk about is the Cynar, which in this photo here, or in this link I have here, it's Cynar Ricetta Originale Artichoke Amaro Liqueur.
Okay.
As far as I understand it, it is an Italian aperitif flavored with artichoke leaves and 12 other botanicals.
Okay.
It is a...
I feel like I'm not at all knowledgeable in this.
So botanicals, as far as like, it's going to be similar to what gin is, as far as being very, very
like a garden
heavy. But as far as an aperitif, it's usually like an after dinner drink, I believe.
I've never heard of it until right
it's
now.
It's not a word you hear commonly.
Okay.
But this is an interesting one. So it's flavored with artichoke leaves. I didn't know that would be a flavor you use in cocktails.
I didn't even know you can make that a flavor.
I didn't even know. Yeah, I didn't even know it had a flavor. But I guess there is artichoke dip. So
yes. The next one is our Nocello walnut liqueur.
Now we're talking.
Sounds good.
Nocello these are all Italian ingredients. It is a walnut and hazelnut flavored liqueur from Italy produced by Tosci Vignola. Its packaging is made all the more distinct by the walnut glued to the top of each cork stopper. It is as its namesake, it is a liqueur. It is going to be something similar to, let's say, Grand Marnier or other flavored liqueurs that you add as a ingredient for drinks and how they taste and everything. And then finally, we have our Difford's saline solution.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second.
Why do they call it saline solution rather than just salt water? It makes it sound so unappealing.
I feel like I need to get my neti pot out.
So on this article link, not just salty water, but saline solution made with Malden natural sea salt blended with spring water and then filtered prior to bottling and hand labeling.
That is the most extra thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I know. Well, this is the difference guide, so that's probably why.
Okay.
Add 2 drops to season a cocktail using the pipette dropper incorporated into the bottle screw top.
Okay.
I don't understand why they need to emphasize that it's saline solution instead of just a 4-to-1 salt water or something like that. But so
go to the beach, scoop some water up, pour it in your cup.
Basically. Also, I actually skipped over this part when I saw the original drink. The garnish is half of a walnut.
Yeah, makes sense.
How cute.
So as far as how you make your drink here, you have your blended Scotch whiskey. You have 1.5 ounces of blended Scotch whiskey. My personal favorite is Johnny Walker Black. As you see, it's actually listed here on the website. You're going to add 1/2 ounce of your Carciofo Amaro liqueur, which could be the Cynar, which is artichoke flavor, or any other similar aperitif, and 1/3 of an ounce of your Nocello walnut liqueur. And finally, you're going to top that off with 2 dashes, which is probably just the 2 drops of your saline solution. You're going to stir all these ingredients in a cocktail shaker, and then you're going to strain it over a large ice cube, like they do for most whiskey drinks, into an old-fashioned glass, and then you will garnish with half a walnut. And from what I can tell on the Difford's guide, this is actually tends to be a stronger drink, both in flavor and in terms of alcohol content. And it's supposedly great for late night sipping. I would say this is probably for people who are more, I don't want to say refined. No. I don't want to say refined, but people who are more
low sodium count.
No, I want to say more like people who are just very particular about their flavors of whiskey and bourbon and things like that. But it is for those very seasoned drinkers, I guess, is the best way to put it. Personal rating, despite the strange saline solution, I would actually most likely drink at least 2 of these sitting at a bar.
Wow.
And have you tried them, Lou?
I have not tried this, no.
Okay.
A lot of the drinks we tend to find we haven't tried yet. We more so base them on our descriptions. We base our rating on the description.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Me being a big fan of Scotch whiskey and already liking one of my favorite Irish whiskeys is actually an Islay single malt known as Lafroig. It has a very smoky flavor to it. It's an acquired taste for many. So I feel like this would be up my alley as far as trying a different whiskey drink. And I say at least 2 because I'm pretty sure I would sit there and sip both like throughout a long conversation at a bar.
Yeah.
And just enjoy myself, But yeah, so I would give it.
All I can think of was you sitting there with like 2 glasses, 1 glass in each hand, and you're just like intermittently sipping both of them.
I mean, that's also accurate.
I just feel bad for the bartender who's got to put this drink together.
Yeah,
it's a relatively simple setup. It's more just the confusion. Yeah, no, and the steps is literally just you mix all your ingredients, and then strain it into a different glass.
Just put it in a shaker, and all right, that's not too bad.
I wanted to ask you, Lewis, have you had Dead Rabbit Irish whiskey?
I have not.
Okay. I went to my local liquor store and a stranger told me to try it. So I bought it.
Mhm.
And I haven't tried it yet, but I was going to ask if you had tried it. So I guess never mind. I don't know. Has anyone tried it?
There's a lot of stories that don't end well that start with a stranger told me to try it.
In my defense, he was an old white guy. So
that's even better.
Yes. No, I thought he worked there. So I asked him what he recommended. And he recommended something. I was like, oh, wow. Okay, thanks. He's like, yeah, I don't work here, by the way. I was like, oh, whoops, sorry. But I bought it anyways.
How much was the bottle?
It was like almost $40.
Oh, that's quite an investment for like something you haven't tried before.
I'm not a huge Irish whiskey fan. I'm more of a bourbon person. Mm-hmm. So he said it's a good like gateway into Irish whiskey because it has hints of that bourbon-y kind of like smoke. Yeah, because it's matured in bourbon casks. So, he said it's got hints of both. So I'm excited to try it. Maybe I'll try some later today. What did you rate it, by the way, Lewis?
I was actually going to say a 4.5.
4.5. Wow, out of 5. Yeah.
Out of 5.
Yes,
man, that's high.
Mm-hmm. I was going to rate it as far as like concept and as far as concept, personal taste, and the relation from the movie to the character. 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. Before I go on, I also wanted to mention what I found on your Dead Rabbit Irish whiskey. The Dead Rabbit apparently is a New York.
It's based off a gang.
A gang, really?
A New York gang as well.
Yes. But there's apparently a NYC bar. It is, like you said, it is a sourced whiskey, was first aged in seasoned bourbon barrels for 5 years before being finished off in small Virgin American oak barrels. So it's definitely got that smoky bourbon flavor with a tinge of that just oak after taste.
Aged 5 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did I ever tell you guys? I know I haven't told Tom, but so fun little story time, and then we'll get back to the drink because this has to do with drinking. So my father, at the time I was living with my parents, my father had this bottle of Widow Jane. Mm-hmm. Does anyone know what Widow Jane is?
I do not.
Whiskey, no?
It is a whiskey. 16-year or 20-year-old whiskey. Aged.
Oh, no.
Yes. I was new to the drinking community. I was fresh 21. And I went to my parents' liquor cabinet. I was like, I can do this now. So I went in, saw the Widow Jane. And I was like, oh, I like whiskey. Let me open this unopened bottle of whiskey and drink it with Coke.
Oh, no.
So needless to say, my dad was not happy when he found out that I wasted a $90 bottle of whiskey and mixed it with Coke when it's meant to just be drank straight on the rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was bad.
That's pretty bad.
That's my other drink I can't have anymore just from the trauma.
I don't drink Coke anymore from the trauma.
Yeah. It was good, though, with the Coke. I'm not going to lie.
But whoever would like to go next as far as their personal appeal of this drink.
Yeah, Tom, do you want to rate this drink? We usually do it on a scale of 1 to 5.
1 to 5.
So.
Well, I like all the little touches of flavor. My concern is I do not have enough of a refined palate to fully appreciate the drink. So for me, I can see why someone would give it 4.5, but for me, it's more of a 3.
Okay, that's a good middle ground rating. That's a fair one. Isaiah, what about you?
Do you one better? I'll give it a 2.
Wow! Whoa! Is it the saline?
It's because of saline. Also, artichoke. What the hell? No.
Because if you think about it,
saline, artichoke, and a walnut. I don't feel like I'd like that.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't tequila from artichoke?
No.
Oh, what am I thinking of?
It is from agave.
Okay, starts with an A. I was on the right track.
Yes, it does start with an A.
I was almost there. Well, then never mind, Isaiah. This is not a drink for you. I'm not surprised you do not like this one. Nothing about this screams Isaiah.
Everything about this
No,
screams.
it's not.
Everything about this screams inner Isaiah.
Yes. Now, I think I'll have to give it. I'm going to give it a 4.
Ah.
4 out of 5. I like whiskey, and the walnut liqueur sounds like a nice touch, like that oaky kind of flavor to blend with the scotch. I also think another point that you have to factor in is the theme. The theme is very important. It makes a lot of sense for Oakenshield. Don't know why the salt. Maybe that's a mixology connoisseur thing that I don't understand. I'd love to try it. Just don't tell me there's saline solution in it. Just say there's a little bit of salt.
That's right. If you told me it was a dash of salt, I'd be like, oh, all right.
Yeah. Just throws me off. But yeah, I'd say 4 out of 5. All right. So that is, thank you for your drink, Lewis. That was
the effort.
Yeah.
Whatever.
The most passive aggressive, like, appreciate it. You tried.
You tried.
I was like, that's a great, connected to the theme, but the little touches whoever designed the drink, I think is, some thought went into this thing.
Pip Hansen from the Marvel Bar at the Bachelor Farmer. I want to say he was probably just doing a dash of salt, not, straight up saline solution from the difference guide. But who knows?
I do think also, and I could be completely wrong, that you could also drink this without salt at all. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, could also be the idea.
Yeah. I'm sure the flavor is completely different, but I feel like it would still be just as fine without the solution. All right. Well, Lewis, would you like to take a moment to do our sponsor for this episode?
No.
Well, not do them, but read them. Read it.
Well.
Yes.
This escalated quickly. We'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's episode, Shaker and Spoon. It's a monthly subscription service that gives you bar-quality recipes and ingredients designed by award-winning mixologists. If you'd like your very own subscription, head over to shakerandspoon.com and use our promo code SIPS10, that's SIPS, number 10, to get $10 off your first subscription. Again, that's promo code SIPS10, SIPS, number 10, to get $10 off.
Good job.
Thanks.
Yeah, seriously, go check it out. We did a box a couple seasons ago that was very good, might I add. And I still have some of the ingredients that I'm saving for next time I have people over, so I can make it for them as well. All right, now let's move on to my question of the day. So this is going to be a fun little game of sorts. So in the movie, there is a scene between Bilbo and Gollum, Smeagol, where a little riddle game of sorts.
Uh-oh.
So we're going to have our own little riddle game of sorts.
Oh boy.
Yes. Now, obviously, I don't expect you guys to get the correct answers. So if none of you guess it correctly, I will give the point to whoever has the most creative answer. All right. The most reasonable.
Did you just announce to us that you don't think any of us will be able to answer this riddle?
Correct.
She's calling us stupid.
There's multiple. I have like 5 riddles. So I don't expect you guys to get all of them at least.
Okay. All right. If we can, at this point, with these low expectations, if we get one, I'm going to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I would be too. So let's see. We're going to start with number 1. But basically, first riddle. I was going to do a Smeagol impression. I'm not doing that. All right.
Bailing.
Yeah.
Bailing before it starts.
Yeah, I'm not going to. We don't need that. Alrighty. First question. The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I?
That's it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I?
Every person gets to answer. And I'll give a point to whoever I like the most.
I want to say food. I don't know why, but I want to say food.
Oh, okay.
The more you take.
In a way. The more you take, the more you leave behind.
Oh, doesn't really fit with the verb take, but I'd say friends.
Memories?
Oh,
I like that
creative answers. But they're all wrong.
Of course.
The answer is footsteps.
Oh, yeah. See how that works.
The more footsteps you take, the more you leave behind you. Ah.
Do you take footsteps, though, or do you take steps?
Now we're getting philosophical here.
You're like, hey, take footsteps ahead. No, you'd say take steps ahead.
Well,
I don't know. I feel like that one cheated.
Pick it up with Google. That's where I got this from. I'm going to give the point to Isaiah because his was funny. It made me chuckle.
I was thinking the more food you take in, the more shit you leave behind.
Exactly.
That's what I did not say it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you deserve points for speaking out loud. Yeah.
We don't hold back here.
Yeah, all right. I'm learning.
Next question, or riddle, I guess. What has hands but cannot clap? Isaiah, I know what you're thinking. Shut the fuck up.
That's a clock.
Yeah, a clock.
Oh, Isaiah's gone. Isaiah's got a little 7-year-old.
I'm gonna take the L, but I gotta say it. I gotta call in. It's an ass.
Yeah.
Why does an ass have hands? I'm concerned.
I'm gonna say I don't know who said it first, but it is clock. So I will give it to both of you.
No, it was Tom who said it first.
Aw, look at you, so honest. Lewis, you don't get the point then. So it is 1-1-0. Next question, riddle. What gets broken without being held?
My heart?
Oof. No. What gets broken without being held?
Society.
Wow. Nope. Profound.
Very philosophical. Tom, do you have an answer?
I don't. First thing I think of is heart. Yeah.
I'm going to probably give the point to Isaiah again for being funny. It is a promise.
I see what they did. Yeah.
You guys are kind of on the right track with heart, but it didn't make me laugh. Isaiah knows the way to my heart, that's for sure.
Well.
All right, it's punny jokes. All right, we have Isaiah at 2, Tom at 1, Lewis at 0. Not a shocker. Next question.
Wow.
Jeez, expectations are getting lower and lower.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. What is always in front of you but cannot be seen?
Air?
Lewis is just going with like logical answers. No.
The future?
Isaiah?
Oh, I'm gonna forfeit. That's probably the answer right there.
Yeah, it is. Good job, Tom. 2 points. 2-2-0.
That was my second thought. I just spoke the first one.
It's okay. Now, Lewis, you can still guess, but it doesn't matter anymore. Isaiah and Tom are tied for 2. So if one of you guys gets this correct, then you win. What is it that no one wants to have, but no one wants to lose either? This is a tricky one.
This is what to make a really depressing joke.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I was too. But I'm going to guess money.
Okay.
I want to say a cat.
Oh, that is the... Okay.
I love my cat. Thank you very much.
Oh, God. I have to get it right or I'm done. There's no other... I got to forfeit.
This is a tricky one.
Yeah, I got nothing's coming to mind.
Surprisingly, Lewis was somehow the closest. Not quite, but the closest. It was a lawsuit. Yeah.
All right.
You don't want a lawsuit, but you also don't want to lose one either.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a good one.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess. I mean, I don't want to give it to you for the cat, but I think I have to because Tom didn't give an answer.
You're stuck with the cat. Like I knew as soon as he said cat, because that's hilarious. That like if I didn't get it right, there was no.
It's all or nothing there.
Yeah.
The reason was like nobody wants a cat. Technically, like even
once you have one, you're like,
then
my son now. I can't get rid of that.
My cat is very hurt by all of your comments.
All right. Well, good job, Isaiah. You win bragging rights.
Yes.
Woo. Now, since you're the winner, why don't you give us some facts?
Yes.
As your prize.
Yeah, so let's get into some facts.
About the Hobbit? Oh boy.
The Hobbit. Hobbit.
I'm actually curious for this one because I don't know. This is so far like all of the movies we have done. I feel like I've known majority of the facts you've told us just because I'm a nerd and I watch a lot of behind the scenes shit, documentaries and stuff. This is one I don't know anything about. So
now it's funny. Now, as we've been going through this episode, I'm about to make a lot of callback jokes because a lot of the stuff we were talking about earlier in the episode has now come back up. All right.
Oh boy. Is it saline solutions?
No, I think you wish.
Okay.
The first fact for today is when selling the film rights to The Hobbit, J.R.R. Tolkien forbade Disney from ever being involved as he hated their altered and more cheerful versions of story adaptations.
I have so much respect.
Which is probably the smartest move that man ever has made in life, other than making some of the greatest stories ever told.
What is his name actually stand for?
Like the JRR part?
Because I've seen something where it's like Jolkin, Rolkin, Tolkien.
I don't think that's true.
No, it's not.
John Ronald Reuel Tolkien.
So,
okay, JRR.
Do I understand what you just said correctly? That before he died, he said the one place you cannot sell the rights to is Disney?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so
he knew.
Said, yo, screw the mouse. Don't ever give him any of my stuff.
Oh my God, I love that man so much now.
Based.
Yeah, he saw like the Disney adaptations of like all, the crazy fairy tales, and they're always like cheerful, because they're like Grimm's fairy tales, right? They're grim. They're terrible. They're like,
yeah.
Unfortunately, he didn't think about Amazon.
Yeah, God, yeah, he didn't know it existed. Otherwise, he would have put it in there. I just think just the idea of like putting it in your in your trust that like even after I'm dead, you cannot sell to Disney. Like that's a passionate statement. Yeah, that's a passionate statement.
Mm-hmm.
And if he knew, he would have said Amazon too. But he's a genius. But
but it's funny too because this movie did feel like a Disney movie, just a little bit.
There
I don't
were
know about
moments.
you guys.
Yeah,
there were moments.
I thought the tone was mixed, and I
yes.
it's like what?
We'll discuss that when we get to our when we get there but we'll just put a little pin in that until we get there.
Yeah. By the way, the people he did sell it to, they ended up being the United Artists in 1968, which was I believe oh my God, who's the guy who did Apocalypse Now? I'm blanking on his name.
Coppola,
yeah. I believe United Artists is he's part of that. So interesting.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into some lawsuits now. All right, so this is something
hey, look at
they don't want to have, but they got one and they don't want to lose it. Which is funny too, because we'll talk about a different lawsuit in one of the future movies too.
Oh boy!
In February 2008, the Tolkien estate sued New Line Cinema, the production company for The Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, for $220 million for breach of contract, as they had only paid an upfront fee of $62,500 for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, while it went on to gross $6 billion in the worldwide box office.
Wow.
Wait.
That's a lot of numbers you just threw.
Yeah, say that one more time.
Okay, so we'll do timeline order. Basically, New Line Cinema only paid $62,500 for the film rights to the Tolkien estate.
Oh my God.
They then said, wait a minute, that's not right. And then the Tolkien estate sued them for $220 million, which was like 7.5% of the total gross of all the money from the box office, right?
Mm.
They were only suing for 7.5%, meaning it was $220 million, because the movies in total made $6 billion.
Crazy.
I want to know why they didn't
why did they only pay $62,000 and what did they expect?
And why did they accept it at first?
I have a feeling it was one of those like upfront and then royalties was in the contracts, but then they kind of were they didn't nail down anything.
Mm.
Or it could be Warner Brothers was doing some Hollywood accounting, which is, well, we never make money.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have frontline points, if you don't have residuals, which is like a set, which is already pretty crappy, or if you don't have first dollar, what's called first dollar points. I mean, they tried to screw Tom Hanks out of $32 million from Forrest Gump, claiming Forrest Gump didn't make much of a profit. I think to this day, Warner Brothers still claims the original Batman hasn't made a profit.
Yeah. Okay.
Whatever you say, Warner Brothers. Whatever you say.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's just a lot of money's getting thrown around, and it's just the fact that only 7% is what they wanted, and they're like, oh, and then they were like, oh, it's $220 million, by the way.
Yeah, and was there an outcome? Does it say that if there was an outcome?
So the reason I'm mentioning this fact here for this one is because a part of that lawsuit was that they weren't allowed to adapt The Hobbit until a settlement was reached. So eventually a settlement was reached. The crazy thing is that there's no public settlement, so nobody really knows if there's an official litigation.
Damn.
However, Warner Brothers did make a $38 million donation to the Tolkien estate, and then suddenly the movie was greenlit. So
hush hush money. I mean,
yeah.
That's not a donation. That's here, we'll give you this and you'll shut up.
Yeah, and that's pretty good leverage too. You can't make The Hobbit until you pay us.
Oh yeah.
So they're motivated to settle at that point.
Yeah, they were making because for this movie, which we'll get in later on in the thing, there was a lot of delays, especially since MGM was involved. They were the original studio that was involved in this. They were having a bunch of financial issues, and they were getting sold to a different company at the time and stuff like that. I believe it wasn't Amazon at the time. I don't think it was, or they were trying to find a buyer for MGM at the time. It was it was very muddy.
MGM owns the United Artists catalog.
Now our next fact is going to be people who almost played Bilbo Baggins.
My favorite.
I want you to get ready for this weird ass list.
Oh boy.
All right. This list includes Eddie Redmayne, who bombed his audition.
Who is that?
News commander from Fantastic Beasts.
I literally just found out who he was 2 days ago.
Well, look at that.
Yes, I know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Next is Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yes and no. I feel like he's a little too young, especially in 2012.
Yeah.
This was after what do you call it? Spider-Man. So
he's a little baby.
This would have been his second.
Looks a little like
he looks like him, yeah.
Yeah, like the Lord of the Rings. Not Frodo.
Bilbo.
Frodo, yes. He looks like Frodo.
Oh, he looks like Frodo. Oh, yeah.
He looks like Frodo, so you could see how they'd be related.
Mm-hmm.
Our next person is Shia LaBeouf.
Nope.
Oh, that would have been a set.
Just do it.
Just a year with Shia LaBeouf while he's still drinking.
They would have had to deal with him for 3. The shooting days, which I'll get later on, was basically 3 years worth of shooting. So they would have dealt with him for 3 years.
That's ridiculous. Why so long? Because of all the pushbacks?
It was all 3 movies because they were filming all 3 of them.
Oh. Duh. Okay, yeah.
And our next person would have been Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's weird.
I mean, only because he was in Harry Potter, so he's already got that fantasy tie.
Yes. However, that's the reason why he turned it down, because he didn't want to do any more fantasy movies.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
fair.
huge franchise. Like you've already
That's, like,
got a
all
huge
he's tied
franchise.
to. Yeah.
Yeah, Harrison Ford's done it. You know, you can start a couple of franchises.
Yeah. He's a separate. He's a whole separate unit.
Yeah.
And then our last person is James McAvoy.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that. I thought those were like none of those are crazy.
I thought the fact it was just Shia LaBeouf for Tobey Maguire in the set.
Yeah, Shia
LaBeouf for sure.
Remove Shia LaBeouf's personality out of it.
Mm.
You know, like he's a good actor. He looks like a hobbit. That's not a terrible choice. That's not a. I don't think he would have been a terrible choice. Now, if you're on location with him for 3 years, he's the worst choice in the world.
Yeah.
But from a pure acting standpoint, I don't think that's crazy.
Now, I think if he had, or if any of those other actors had been chosen, I think Bilbo's character would have been completely different, though. I think that
he would have had more edge. You're right.
Yeah, I think Martin Freeman portrayed. Oh, we'll get into that too. That's a whole nother subject.
All those choices, they made the right choice.
Yeah.
Now, the art department had about 350 people on it. Crazy. They made about 8,000 digital paintings based off 500 concept sketches. Lead artists Alan Lee and John Howe joked that they, at that point, had just been started drawing in 3D, where they would both draw the same image, but one would do it in red, the other would do it in blue, and then they would put them both together to be a 3D image.
Oh, my God.
They were drawing so much, they're just like, screw it.
Yeah.
Throwback to Guillermo del Toro.
Ooh.
Oh?
He is a co-writer for this film.
Is he really?
He was going to direct it at one point, wasn't he?
Yes, because at some point there was originally going to be a 2-movie deal where the book was just going to be 2 movies. Guillermo del Toro was set to direct both those movies, so he was a very big part in the development and the pre-production, all that stuff. Eventually, he stepped away though because the MGM issues and the movie had never been actually especially greenlit, and they were working on it for like a couple of years, and he just was tired of delays, and he was just like the stuff surrounding the movie was just like, I don't want to do it anymore because it's just too complicated and nobody wants to actually like
drama.
give us a go ahead. So he was like, I'm taking a step back, and then eventually they had to find a new director, and Peter Jackson stepped,
which is hilarious.
I actually think it might have been better with Del Toro.
I agree. I mean, I'm a huge Del Toro fan, but that so I might be a little biased.
Yeah, I think just having a different sensibility. There's such different stories, a different sensibility, and someone that didn't who hadn't been in that world for so long as Peter Jackson had already been.
Yeah, which is surprising that since he had been in it for so long, that the Hobbit is so different.
Yeah,
compared to the Lord of the Rings, like not only just story-wise, but even like how it was made. Like you can just tell there was a lot more love put into the Lord of the Rings than there was for the Hobbit.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because he put so much work into, the original that he was tired. He was like,
oh yeah.
So I think it would have been refreshing. Yeah.
3 years on that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So because of Del Toro's work and influence on the film, the dwarf Bifur, I think it's Bifur.
Bifur Bomber.
Yeah. So the dwarf Bifur doesn't actually have an axe in his head in the books. And so there was actually a pun added by Guillermo del Toro for the word bifurcated, which means to split in two.
He has an axe in his head. I had to Google it because I didn't believe you. I never noticed he had an axe in his head.
There's a scene in the movie where he gets the axe removed from his head, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's been years."
I don't remember that. What the hell? Oh man.
Anyway, now all the dwarf hair that they all are covered in is real hair from a yak.
Oh my goodness.
That's a lot.
The first 2 Hobbit films, as originally this was supposed to be a 2-picture deal, the first 2 Hobbit films cost nearly double than the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy cost to make.
That is crazy. I don't understand.
$358 million.
Now, is that do we think that might be because of like inflation between the
inflation wouldn't be much of a impact.
It wouldn't be that drastic.
It wasn't that long ago. It was only like
Yeah.
within the same decade.
I think a little bit of that too is that it's Lord of the Rings made so much money that they are signing checks a little more easily.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, Bilbo's house and Elrond's chambers in the movie were completely remade because they didn't have the sets anymore. So they had to completely remake them from scratch. And they were all created in the original stage that they were created in Wellington, New Zealand.
I always wanted to go to New Zealand for that reason.
You know Sam Neill's a New Zealander?
I did not. Everything good comes out of New Zealand, it seems.
One of my great regrets in life is I had a movie that I had written that was being shot in New Zealand, and they were going to fly me down on set. And I did not want to go down there because I was smoking 2 packs a day at the time.
Mm.
And I was really scared of flying 12, 14 hours without being able to smoke a cigarette. And I avoided that trip so much, showed no enthusiasm for it. And then they called one day and they were like, hey, would you mind if we didn't fly you down and maybe just do the rewrites through fax? And I was so relieved. I was like, no, I wouldn't mind that at all. And years later, of course, I quit smoking. And now look on that of just like, I had a paid trip down in New Zealand for a movie I was shooting, and I was trying to avoid it. And I feel it's such a huge regret of mine. I am determined to get down to New Zealand one of these days and just make up for that somehow.
One of these days.
Yeah.
For sure.
New Zealand's it's a very interesting country. They're very, very weird, but in a good way.
Very weird. Okay.
Just don't try to get a dentist over there. Their dental is absolutely atrocious. Yeah. You'll pay out the nose. Now, on the first day of shooting, before filming anything, there was what's called a pauhiri, which is a welcoming ceremony by the local indigenous people of the Maori.
Maori.
The Maori. I'm going to call it pronunciation, adaptation.
Mm-hmm. Adaptation.
Now, Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum, he had one of the first scenes that were filmed. So the first scenes that they filmed were basically the cave scenes between Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis. And so basically after the first week, after they had finished filming all of his parts, he stayed on the set as a second unit director for the crew.
Oh.
Yeah, so he was the second. So he was directing the people doing like pickup shots and stuff like that throughout the rest of the trilogy.
Interesting.
Huh.
Sir Ian McKellen. Gandalf.
Yes.
This man almost quit the trilogy.
Why?
As he was forced to act alone in front of green screens in order to portray his height with shorter hobbits, right? So they weren't using any of the tricks they had used in Lord of the Rings, which I will get to when we get to the Lord of the Rings. But they were doing a whole new way of recording the actors separately in green screen sets, and then they would put them in the same scene in post. Which
this one I did know.
Yeah, he did not like that. He was the first couple of days he was absolutely miserable, and he was 100% like ready to go because he just did not like dealing with it. He didn't have to deal with he didn't get to act off anybody anymore. He was just on his own.
Yeah,
he didn't like that at all.
So it's just awful
for an actor like that. That's got to be miserable.
Oh yeah.
So the crew, to show their appreciation, they threw a Gandalf Appreciation Day and cheered the actor up by decorating his tent with props from the Lord of the Rings films and such like that, and coming to visit him so that he wouldn't be so alone.
It is very sweet.
For our final facts for today, there was a break between filming the movies and on holiday. For some specific reason, this is so niche and I could not find it, but the location manager, Matt Gordon, said he was going to write and record a psychedelic sludge rock album. Whatever that means.
Does he know what it means?
I want to find it.
I really do. I was looking all over for it. I could not find it. I don't know if he actually wrote it or anything like that. But the fact that they said, "Hey,
just got drunk one night,"
and he said those words: "psychedelic sludge rock album." Like he was very specific.
Fuck yeah.
Psychedelic sludge rock.
I don't even know what that is. but I don't want to listen to it.
Yeah, I'll listen to that.
Yeah, but those are all our facts for today.
All right. I only knew one of them, so that was pretty good. Yeah.
Nice.
Very good.
Very nice.
I look forward to the next two Hobbit movies as well, because those I also don't. I can't wait for the Lord of the Rings. There's one fact I'm waiting for.
Yeah, I know.
I won't say what it is. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Isaiah. Now, let's get into The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. What we thought, what we liked, what we didn't like, and what we rate it.
I saw it in the theater in 60 frames per second in 3D.
Oh God!
Oh, you saw it.
Yeah.
Oh, you went all the way.
It was an interesting experience. It did really have that soap opera effect to it, which is so, it's just so strange how you're getting more information, but it feels less cinematic. And yet it happens. You get used to it. But suddenly things do look a little fake. Like the sets don't look as good at 60 frames per second. It's really surprising. For me, I got to see it with my 10-year-old again. I had her watch I put her through the entire 6 films. It's far more violent than I remember. And for The Hobbit, I was like, okay, well, The Hobbit's geared for younger audiences. And then so we watched that, and then we see like the white orc decapitate the dwarf grandfather and toss
that. Was not seeing that coming at all. I was like, wow, that's dark.
Yeah, that's tremendously dark. That's you see your grandfather's head rolled. I mean, it's just, and then I guess the character who sees it is the son. So it's you like,
it's a strong point. It's just surprising that they put that in a Lord of the Rings movie, because for the most part they're respectful on that kind of stuff, it seems.
Or at least the Hobbit movie. Like Lord of the Rings, it is more of an adult, mature story. But The Hobbit, at least as it was always pitched to me through the years, was, it's, for a slightly younger audience.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but so I
sure
was
felt like it.
Yeah, there's parts of it that are like, I mean, like they're singing dwarfs. There's so many moments that don't work for me that I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. And it sounds silly because, Peter Jackson obviously is so much more talented than I am and so much more accomplished than I am. It feels kind of silly critiquing, his work, because he's this is the undertaking of this, and to have this kind of massive undertaking and even to produce something watchable is amazing, let alone very good. But there's no way to see it and not compare it to Lord of the Rings, which is, an historic trilogy of epic filmmaking. You can't really escape the comparison. But I felt like there's so many moments that don't work, that are supposed to work. Like the killing of the King Goblin. Like, to me, every time I've seen that, it's like this, I know what they're trying to do. Of like the surprise of, and then he guts him and slices his throat, and then that quip of that will do. But it does at no point. I've seen the movie 4 times now, and it still can't get that moment to work for me. And there's a certain laziness to technology that bugs me, particularly that goblin. That whole sequence of them escaping from the goblins and the whole cartoony Laurel and Hardy feel to it.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, then I really love the scene at the end with the orcs and watching people sacrifice themselves for each other and all willing to die to protect each other. And then the birds come and save them. And, that still moves me. Like, that to me is seeing Bilbo Baggins. He's not going to sit there and watch Oakenshield get killed. Like he's not going to do it. And so he gets up, even though he knows he's going to die. He can't do nothing. And then all the other dwarfs come and they save him. And I love that moment. And it works so well for me that I still I will forget the singing dwarfs and balancing dishes and, like stuff that feels out of place to me. And then the nice moment with Bilbo Baggins saying, I have a home and you guys don't have a home. And he's so good. And Martin Freeman is so good in this. That to me, ultimately, the really great moments are good enough that I've seen this 4 times. And the bad moments keep the story from being great, of like really good Lord of the Rings type. There's an old line from Howard Hawks about what's a movie of 3 great scenes, no bad ones. And I teach that philosophy of just like, you want great scenes, but also just as important, no bad ones. And The Hobbit has some bad scenes that keep it from being great. But it's still got great scenes in it that keep it, I can watch this film 4
great
times.
Enough. Yeah.
Like there's so many great moments and the acting is really solid and the characters and the backstories, like it all ultimately kind of works for me, but it leaves me still kind of more upset by the bad scenes of like, damn it, it's so close to being really good. It's so close to being really good. So I have mixed feelings about it, but I love that he tried 60 frames per second in 3D. I love like, let's try it. Let's see what happens. Like they're gonna write me a check to do it this way. Let's give it a shot.
It's interesting too, because you have that, you have that film as an example for the 60 frames per second and everything. And it does arguably worse than, well, not arguably, it's very obvious. It does a lot worse than Avatar did with 60 frames per second. And it makes you wonder, like, where does that initial issue come from where you're able to compare, like, okay, this is awful and this is really good.
Yeah.
What is the difference in it has to be the CGI, but it's like, what specifically is it?
And is the new Avatar 60 frames per second?
It is a HDR 48 frames per second.
Oh, it's 48.
48, close enough.
Yeah. My mistake.
Now, am I saying that number right? Was The Hobbit 60 or was it 48?
I thought it was.
I think it's usually 48 because I know like the way projectors work in the theaters, if they have to. So the way things are set up, they have to be set up specifically, and I feel like HDR is always 48.
Okay,
it was 48. You're correct.
Yeah, so I'm just saying it wrong. So go back to everything I said about 60 and change it to 48.
Yes, same.
Same.
Yeah.
Minus those 12 frames. Those 12 frames might have made a difference. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't seen the new Avatar in 60 frames. I'm curious now.
It's very weird. It's very weird.
Do you get used to it after 3 hours?
No.
You still don't?
No. I mean, like, you might forget about it, but then what it does was the crazy thing is that what I've figured out how to explain it is that it switches back and forth, right? So you'll have a scene where it's not in HDR, but then you'll have a scene where it is in HDR. So it'll switch from it'll feel like a video game cinematic to then not a video game cinematic and then back to a video game cinematic. So it's really weird.
Oh, I wonder why.
Because I guess there's certain scenes because like this, and it was random too, because like it would be scenes where it was a lot of visual effects, right? It wasn't like people talking. That would be in HDR. But then like the scene where people were talking would not be in HDR. But then like if the scene after the people talking was an action sequence and it had HDR, the like last 2 shots of the people talking would then be in HDR for some reason. And then it would go to the HDR scene.
That's
and then it was so off-putting. I didn't like it at all.
That's so strange because James Cameron is so smart and so, good with that stuff. Like there had to be some reason that just didn't kind of like. I can't imagine him just being random about it. Yeah, I'm also really curious about this Avatar. Just email them.
Yeah.
Does Avatar have as many physical sets as The Hobbit? Because that's where I saw it a lot, was like, that's fake stone. Like that's not real stone. Like that's what I would see when watching The Hobbit. So I'm curious if Avatar had the same issue of like, well, it's
harder to point out the CGI when it's all CGI versus
exactly.
The Hobbit,
it's all
where
green
it's
screen.
mixed. Right.
Yeah, Ian McKellen would have went insane for shooting Avatar.
Also, you guys hear about the 9-hour cut that's going to go on Disney Plus for Avatar?
No,
Yes.
Shut up. Really?
Yeah. Disney Plus. It's the Avatar release. When they put it on there, it's going to have a 9-hour cut of it.
That's
so
amazing.
I guess you have no excuse now. You gotta watch
it.
When I found out, I was like, you know what? I can no longer complain that the Lord of the Rings trilogy, like each movie, the extended edition is like an hour long. I can no longer complain about that because the extended edition of Avatar is an extra 6 hours.
Oh my God.
So what would you rate this movie to get back on track here?
3.5.
Okay.
3.5.
That's fair.
I do like The Hobbit. It is a lot. Like as a trilogy, I think it's a lot, especially since it's only one book. So I think this part is like a good starting point. So it isn't terrible, but yeah, like as Tom was saying, it's got a few good scenes and it's got a few bad scenes, and you're like, oh, okay. It just kind of evens out. So it's kind of middle of the road for me. I don't think I enjoyed it, but like I felt it could have been better. It could have been a lot worse, but it is what it is. A few things I kind of noticed though is that like for the journey to start off, Bilbo kind of just changed his mind like that. Like it was just a full 180. He's just kind of like, no, I'm not doing that. That's dangerous. And then he spent like 30 seconds thinking about it. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna go risk my life. Okay, bye. And then just went off on a grand adventure. So
I think what we got from that is that Bilbo is just impulsive.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, that's all right. Okay, so the movie's starting now. Okay, all right, we're 15 minutes in. He just 180'd. We're jumping into it. All right, cool. So I thought that was a bit weird. Though the movie itself is a little more comical than I thought it'd be. There's a lot of like jokes and funny moments that I was not expecting. I thought that was enjoyable. Tone-wise, it's kind of weird because it's this one's kind of darker. Like The Hobbit's kind of just as it's not gonna say it's darker than Lord of the Rings. I would say it's a little less because of the comical moments, less darker than Lord of the Rings so far. From what I have so far, I was just surprised by that. However, I don't know if it's because I watched the extended edition, which, by the way, the extended edition of the first movie is only like an extra 20 minutes. So each scene kind of has a few extra scenes. There's like a few extra things of dialogue here and there. And it's only like a few seconds here and there, which kind of add up to 20 minutes because the movie's like 2.5 hours long. So I don't know if it's that, but it feels like each scene kind of just overstays its welcome just a bit too long. Just each scene just kind of just like, oh, okay, we're still going. And then it would jump to the next thing. Like, So I don't know. I just didn't like that. Also, a lot of ex machinas, which they're very convenient. So many things are so convenient. They just so happen to be doing this, and this so happens to save them. Just so happens to fall in the right place, and just so happens to do this and that. At what point are we just gonna actually have some actual danger where something isn't gonna come and save them? Because there's no thrill to it. I'm just being like, well, they're just gonna get saved because they got saved in that point. They got saved in this point. They got that happened and this happened, and something's always there to continue the plot along. Which, if you got one or two, all right, whatever. I'm not going to complain. You could have done something better, but whatever. When you have like 15 of them, then I'm like, okay, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, there's a lack of stakes there. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, because like I think especially the moment I realized that it happened like throughout the whole movie was actually at that part where the birds came and just happened to catch them all when they jump off the cliff.
Now, I want to add to that. The unfortunate part of the book adaptation was there is a lot more story in the book based off the birds. Like you meet the birds before that moment. And so there's like...
You're telling me they made 3 movies. 6 hours. 6+ hours.
It's a big book. It's a big book.
It wasn't even on one book, and they couldn't include the scene to explain where the birds come from. Are you serious?
We don't have time to Produce the birds. Gotta keep the story moving.
Yeah, I think there's certain things you gotta sacrifice, but I think that should have been something that they should have included, so it didn't feel so ex machina, like you said. It would have felt a little more like, okay, that makes sense because they've already been introduced. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add, really.
To finish the point I was making with that, though, is that the reason I was like, oh, there's so many ex machinas in this movie is because not just that the birds showed up, I was like, okay, that kind of made sense. The birds just so happened to also get all of their weapons, so that when they landed in the next area to do battle, they had all their weapons ready.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, so I was like, are you serious? You telling me in all that chaos, they just happened to get saved by the birds? All right. But the birds also just so happened to also get all of their weapons, despite the fact that they were just kind of flinging them off the cliffs.
Of course.
It's movies are so funny of like what catches your eye and bugs you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. With Isaiah, it's a lot.
It's like logical fallacies of just like that. There's no way that would happen. My suspension of disbelief is that we're going to be in this magical, mystical world, right? But I'm like, even things as simple as those things of like, yeah, there's no possible way that could have happened even in that magical land. That doesn't make any sense, which is what bugs me. Though I do believe all the characters in their roles are very, very good. Like all the acting is pretty good. Martin Freeman, best choice for Bilbo. Like that, I believe that 100% every time he did anything.
I don't know. I'm still rooting for Shia.
I don't know his name. The guy who plays Oakenshield. Thorin, superb. Like I believe that man was actually like a king. Like I was 100% involved with him. That was he did an amazing job.
He's like modern Aragorn for sure.
Was 100%. He sold me on that. So
the actor, since I just found it, sorry to interrupt you, Isaiah, is Richard Armitage.
Yes, as I was saying, the movie's kind of middle of the road for me, though. So many things that could have been better, overstaying its welcome, things that should have been developed but weren't, despite the fact it's only one book and you had 3 movies. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 because I feel like it is just there.
Good.
It's just there.
That's a good rating too. Now, Tom, you said 3.5, right?
Yeah. Okay.
3.5 and a 3. Okay.
I mean, you guys have already covered a lot of probably what I was going to add.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to find something specific to say. I guess the one thing I did want to point out, for me personally at least, I actually enjoyed the scene where they're running through the cave. Maybe not the more comical moments of it, but like the initial violence and fighting back. And for some reason, it just stood out to me every time Ian McKellen, Gandalf says, "Run!" I want to say it was one of my more favorable scenes watching them try to run through the cave to escape the goblins. Not so much for the comical atmosphere, but more for the momentary, the pre-ex machina moments. You know what I mean? Just so happened to grab a ladder to grab their heads and yada. So, or Gandalf just so casually cuts the Goblin King's stomach and then the bridge breaks. But I don't think that I have that much to add because you guys have already covered so much. So I'm really just going to go with my rating at being, I think I'll actually give it a 3.5 as well.
Oh.
Good.
I think it's interesting that both you and I gave it 3.5, and yet like a scene that sticks out to me that I didn't enjoy is one of the scenes that stick out to you that you did enjoy, and then we still turn out the same 3.5 total.
Right, but you have the more, I want to say you have a more refined perspective as far as like a film background versus me. It's like, oh, I like that scene just because I like the violence. I like the
big explosion.
No, I just like the moment of like it's finally showcasing that these dwarves can actually, apart from when they fought the trolls, these dwarves can actually hold their own. It gives you that to some degree, it gives you that reminder of what it was like in the original Lord of the Rings.
No one beats Gimli.
No one beats Gimli. Absolutely,
no one beats Gimli. I fucking love him.
And then the other scenes that you had mentioned, I also I have a home, but you don't. That also was a very moving scene for me, and even watching in the end when Thorin is finally renouncing his distaste or distrust of Bilbo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 3.5 out of 5 for me. I actually wanted to originally rate it a 4, but after some points you guys made, I was like, that is fair. Kind of thing. So, Beth. Last but not least.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna basically ditto to everything you guys said, and then I'm gonna add on some stuff. So the Lord of the Rings in general, the whole series and franchise as a whole, including The Hobbit, does one thing very well, and that is the narrative exposition at the beginning of the movies. I'm a sucker for that kind of shit if it's done right, and they do it so well that it's like, you could just show me the exposition. Like, you could have just shown me the first 15 minutes and I would be happy with just that. Like, it's just done so entertainingly well. And it's like a great way to hook you in and fully immerse you into the story.
And moving and emotional too.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny you say that, because Peter Jackson and Warner Brothers argued like 3 times over the opening dialogue.
Really?
Yeah, they were having very intense fights about it.
Well, they did well.
Yeah.
Of course, Martin Freeman, amazing as Bilbo. Just down even to the minute details of like his hand movements. I don't know if you guys notice, he like clenches his hands and like moves his fingers very like nervously, kind of. It's little things like that that I really appreciate. Actors that kind of like become their character and add these little things that probably weren't in the original script or screenplay, but they add it because they're like, this is what my character would do. He's good.
Yeah.
Of course, we talked briefly about Andy Serkis, his performance in this movie. That whole scene is just amazing. It makes sense. Makes sense why they made that the first scene, because that is a great way to hype you up for a production. Because like just watching Andy Serkis perform that would get me hyped up.
He just breaks my heart. That character just breaks my heart. And he's so sinister, but he does
so well. Yeah. He does I mean, even when we did Planet of the Apes a couple seasons ago, and he did, the characters for that. And it's just like, man, this guy can act.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there was the Wilhelm scream in the movie.
Yes.
That I wrote that down because I was like, that's great. That was during the cave part, I believe. I think someone just got knocked off of the bridge and you just hear, like the scream. So that's always a bonus. Now, we were talking about the comedy and how it felt. So like, to me, the humor. So there's humor in the Lord of the Rings. There's comedic points, even during the most intense moments. Like in the last Lord of the Rings movie, there's spoilers, there's a war. And even during the battle, Legolas and Gimli are having this like banter, kind of like how Captain America and Thor have a banter during wars. And it works. And the reason it works is because of how the characters are established and how the, I guess, editing and the acting plays out. However, in this, it's done so as if you're watching a Disney movie where it's like, oh, hey, I said a joke. Now we're going to sit on it for a few minutes. So you have to be like, oh, yeah, this is a joke that they're saying right now. And you're supposed to laugh, kind of a moment. And it just fails, in my opinion. The humor is just not there. It feels forced and it just feels cheap.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I've seen this joke 1,000 times. And the singing.
I don't know.
Now, there's singing in the books, but it's different to read it than to hear it. And for them to do this whole like choreographed scene to it, it's just that also felt very Disney to me. Like I was watching a musical or something.
Yeah, just the choreography of it. Like
the scene where they're standing in front of the fire and they're singing the Misty Mountains song, that's not bad.
Yeah.
It was all right. But the dishes part, like where they're cleaning the dishes, that was just, yeah, that was bad. There was another song I can't think of that was later on.
Consider yourself blessed.
Yeah. Lastly, CGI. I think that was my biggest issue. You know, they focus so heavily on green screen and computer generated kind of graphics instead of like real visual effects like they did with the original trilogy. And I mean, Ian McKellen, I think, is a prime example of that. Even he didn't want to do this, the series because he was like, I can't do this. This isn't how people should act. They shouldn't act with nothing. They should act with other people there. You know, it just doesn't look as authentic and real to me. It looks fake. So, and especially the orcs.
Yeah, I would rather practical stuff that looks fake than CGI that looks fake.
Mm-hmm. Like, put side by side the original trilogy orc villain versus the Hobbit orc villain, and tell me who you're more scared of. That's all.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it, along with like the absurdity in some of the action scenes that we were talking about with like the ladder over all their heads. It's like, okay, what the fuck is this? You know?
Yeah.
But all in all, I give it a 3.5. Not bad. Sadly, I think that's going to be my highest rated one. Just FYI, I think, from what I remember from these films. But yeah, 3.5.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I remember the three. Like, do I like them? The other one's better? Did they get better? No, they don't. I don't think they do. The second
one has like one good part, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, they're all watchable. They're all good movies. Again, I think it like we even like harkening back to everything everywhere all at once of like if you see something, like if someone were to come in and see The Hobbit and not know anything and not know Lord of the Rings, have no expectations and just sit and watch it, what would they think? Like, would they have a very different experience than us? I think they would. I think they would
enjoy it.
I think they would. And I think about it, like so many of the movies that I loved when I fell in love with movies in my teenage years, it was me on Cinemax or HBO at 2 a.m. and nothing else was on. So I watched this movie because nothing else was on. There's no streaming or anything. You just watched what was playing.
Right.
And that's how I watched The Godfather the first time. It's how I watched one of my favorites, Choose Me, the first time. The Man Who Would Be King with Sean Connery and Michael Caine, one of my favorite movies. That was like how because you got told, you have no idea what this movie is. You have no idea what to expect, and you can get blown away by it.
Oh yeah.
And then with movies where there's so much baggage coming into it, whether it's just marketing campaign or 3 months of people who saw it and got surprised and they they want you to have the same experience that they did, which was this was an amazing experience, but there's no way to have that experience because they were surprised and they were open to something else. Whereas you've got 3 or 4 months of this will change your life, and then like, no, my life is still shitty after this movie. You know, like it's it didn't change anything. So, but I'd be really curious. Like my 10-year-old, she's 10, so her tastes suck. She loved it. Oh, man. She loved it.
That's good. Start them young, you know.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for listening and welcome to season 9. Make sure to follow us on. I know. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Silver Screen Sips for any updates on the latest guests, episodes, and what have you. If you'd like us to review your favorite or least favorite movie, you can email us at silverscreensips@gmail.com with your movie suggestions for our listeners' episodes. And thank you so much, Tom, for joining us today.
Oh, I had a blast. Thank you.
Yes, we had a great time. If you would like to tell the viewers where they can find your work. now would be a great time.
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Story and Plot, one word, Story and Plot. And then my website is storyandplot.com. So if you're interested in screenwriting, I teach classes there, and I have a screenwriting email that goes out bi-weekly, but I've been teaching for about 20 years now, and I enjoy it kind of almost as much as I do writing scripts. So if that interests you, definitely jump on board and come visit us.
There you have it. Yes, go check it out for sure. I know some friends who enjoy screenwriting, so I'll definitely send that their way.
My way.
All right, well, we will see you guys next week with The Desolation of Smaug, right?
Smaug.
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 Smaug?
It's Smaug, but Smaug is funnier.
Oh, yeah. All right, see you guys.
Bye.